Hello everybody, and of course welcome back to another Field of Glory 2 tournament video. In this video, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be analysing the nitty-gritty of the forthcoming tournament, which is of course the rise of the Macedonian phalanx, the Macedonian pikes. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. If you've not clicked that like, subscribe button to the Slivering channel or following them on Twitch, I'm sure you guys know where to follow them already. So of course, like I said, we're going to be looking at the upcoming Macedonian tournament list. We're going to be looking at the advantages, the disadvantages, facing different opponents. I will start by saying the Macedonian list is a very strong list. I fear pike armies more than anything in Field of Glory 2. So let's get on with it. So, of course, we're going to be coming up to the first round. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is, of course, 3 rounds in this tournament. Round 1 is, of course, Greece, 338 BC. This is Macedonians versus Greeks in Mediterranean agricultural. In the next round, number 2, is the Persian, 33 BC. This is Macedonians versus Greek with allies Persian. In Mediterranean agriculture yet again, and we come down all the way to India, where Alexander kind of not failed I'd say, but ended his campaign. We have the third round, which is India. This is 326 BC. This is Macedonian versus Indian in tropical. Of course, they were trying to prevent the Macedonians getting elephants in this, and we're going straight to a earlier list. So we're going to start by looking at the first list here, which is a Macedonian versus Greek mashup, I would say. So this is always an interesting force, I've got to say. Macedonians are strong pikes. Of course, this is the list we've got here. We're going to first look over the Macedonian list. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, this terrain type is not what you've got on the tournament, but I'll try and give you tips and hints as we go along to see how you can improve it, and of course, use the forces to your advantage. So, straight away, I do apologise if there is a slight point difference, but we'll give you a slight comprehension in the list I want to show you. So, as you can see, we start off with a fair amount of pike phalanx. Pikes are pretty brutal, as always. They are large, heavy foot, average protected, good steady. They are not impact, unfortunately, which I find sometimes is a downside, but troops get a massive POA provided pikes are not fragmented or severely so deep pikes POA versus any troops provided of pikes disrupted or disordered, plus armor advantage versus less protected army. So good POAs there for the start off. So as you can see, we get a couple of units right there. So we're going to look at the Macedonian list as we go down. So we've got, of course, the armoured Macedonian style lancers, fantastic cavalry, superior armoured lance, very much great anti-cavalry tactics there. Of course, having 3 units there is particularly helpful. Then we come down to, of course, the veteran armoured cavalry, which is just the bog standard, but it is a higher quality being veteran, superior, it is brilliant. Light spear and swordsman being able to give them extra POAs in combat. Of course, really strong list here with the cavalry at the moment in time. We've not even got down to the infantry yet, and we've got a massive cavalry force to choose. And then we come down to the lighter cavalry spear. Do not underestimate this unit being unprotected. It is a superior light horse unit. It can so we've got a good anti-cavalry tactics here if you wanted to take, depending all on terrain, of course. If it's a rough battle, you may take more infantry and light infantry, but in an open field, you need that cavalry to pull anti-cavalry tactics. Of course, we can predomini. These are light horse good. I've used these in a list currently with another Macedonian list. They are really good at chasing down other light units like light javelins, slingers and swordsmen. But they are good impact as being lancers, but also they are swordsmen. Brilliant. They are going to hurt other light troops. Then we come down to the basic light horse, which is, of course, just harassing forces here with javelins and light spear. Brilliant anti-light tactics there. You want to be using them if there is an open field and the enemy do use a large amount of light units. So we come down to heavy artillery, which, to be honest with you, I'm not a great fan of artillery. If I was on a defending field and I had the points spare, but 36 points, in my opinion, can be used elsewhere, and particularly in a better position. So then we come down to the mainstay, the line breaker, as I would call them, the Macedonian veteran pikes. 96 points is pricey. but they will hold their own. But also sticking a general in there, they will just hold all day long. Unfortunately, they are not impact, so they could take a little bit of damage if the Greeks do have some more impact for. Then we come down to the other pike troops. They do exactly what said in. They are going to hurt. There are a lot of points, but they are going to hurt the enemy. So we come down to the mercenary hoplites. We're coming down to the lesser quality troops here, which are more protected and average. Heavy foot. So remember, at the moment in time, if you looked at our forces, we are a heavy foot army. So going into rough terrain is going to be a bad day. You're going to lose all them good advantages using these heavy foot in that rough terrain. That's something you do not want to do. Of course, the medium foot, which these guys are fantastic. If there is rough terrain to sit in, sit these medium spearmen in there. They are offensive spearmen, giving that 100 POA straight away, even defending in that rough terrain. But remember, they will take extra cohesion tests versus heavy foot or mounted troops. So you've got to be careful where you're advancing these medium foots. If they're in rough terrain, they're going to sit there all day saying, "Come at me, bro," and be particularly fine. So we come down to the citizen hoplites. If you really needed to spend points on these, I see in this list so far there's better units to choose. So it's easy enough going there. Of course, we come to more medium foot, Thracians with heavy weapons. As you know, if we look at the heavy weapon upgrade, you get 100 POA versus any mounted troops, or plus 100 POA versus any foot, and plus 100 versus elephants. Cancels the first 50 POA of enemy armor advantage. So against less armored troops or armored troops, they are going to be fantastic. They get an extra POS there. But also remember, they're medium foot and they will take extra cohesion against cavalry and heavy foot. So rough terrain combination with these the medium spearmen, they could be a nasty combination. But of course, coming down to the mainstay, light troops all the way, we've got a good selection of archers, slingers and javelins. I do recommend taking a good selection to do anti light action. In my list, and when I will do this for my own personal YouTube channel, I am going to definitely have all the pikes. The pikes will certainly hit home and they will take on the Greek forces. So I would possibly take all the lights I could, depending on what terrain factor. If there's massive bits of medium terrain, a rough terrain, you probably want to take a little bit more medium foot if it's in a centre location. If the rough terrain is more on their part of the field, you may want to hold back and try to draw them out. So it's a combination of, if there's lots of rough terrain, take some units, medium troops to take that rough terrain. But if there's a majority heavy open field, take your pikemen, take your cavalry, take your lights, get that anti-cavalry tactics, get that anti-light tactics with your light troops, and have that great combination. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about combined forces. If you have a heavy foot army, you're going to be stuck in the open. If you have a medium foot army, you need to be prepared to take on a lot of heavy foot. But remember, the pike army is very pricey here, very pricey indeed, but it will stay and it will hurt. It will hurt your enemy. In my case, I would go a lot of pikes and I would run forward and hit my opponent in the face. But remember, always see what your opponent is going to choose. What your opponent can choose, and then try to outlast them. As we're here, we're probably good at that. And I think this is a fair assumption of what I probably would choose in the tournament. Of course, good stay of pikes in the centre. Supported, because this is an open field, supported by cavalry and lights all the way. So we're going to have a look at the Greek forces. So I'm just going to drop this in here. So coming to the Greek forces, as we know, the Macedonians are hugely a heavy foot. It's going to be an issue here for the Greeks. The Greeks, we'll look at the Greeks now. We'll get not as much cavalry. We're in a negative cavalry here. So as you can see, we're allowed one veteran unit armoured cavalry and 2 units of armoured cavalry, which can, I think we're at a disadvantage here straight away. I think looking at this list, the Macedonians have the advantage. They have the troops and the cavalry. They have the cavalry so far. So as you can see, we could take a couple of units of cavalry, of armoured cavalry, which are light spears, swordsmen, average running-of-mill cavalry, but like I said, terrain factor is huge here. Of course, a veteran army is just slightly better in quality. Of course, we come down to the light horse javelin. As we know, the other player could take a combination of cavalry. We want to weaken their cavalry down, but remember, terrain always think about your terrain. You're setting your army up suited to the terrain. And as what we see here is an open field, so this is what we would fight with. We'll be fighting in the open. So we come down to the veteran hoplites. Remember, the Macedonian pikes are protected, so we are probably on par with the armour. We're not armoured, we're protected. So the POA advantage there is null. It's the same. It's just going to be on their huge blocks of really good POA advantaged infantry. But we're not offensive. We're not impact. So I think straight away we'll take both of them veteran hoplites. I think it's going to be a rough day for the Greeks looking at this. I think I'm particularly rooting for the Macedonians here, but we've got massed Thracian pellets, which are beautiful units, fantastic in combination. So we come down to the veteran hoplites. Mercenary hoplites are average, protected, not as good as the veteran hoplites due to quality, but coming at 48 points, a pricey unit there. You see, I would possibly in this list go for quantity over quality here at the amount of hoplites we could possibly take. But remember, you've got to try and block the cavalry up, block his cavalry, reduce his own control, reduce his control on the battlefield. I think that's what I would do, because I don't think I would take citizen hoplites, the average and protected. But they're undrilled. You lose that 6 points there for the being undrilled. So the difference between there is the same kind of men, a heavy spearman, unmanoeuvrable. You see, I'd personally go the mercenary hoplites here, but I think, like I said, it's still a difficult list for the Greeks to fight. Of course, we come down to the medium foot. If there is rough terrain to take and to occupy, the mass Thracian pellets, peltis are what you want. And of course, the Greeks as well here, fantastic light spear, swordsman, and of course, being the swordsman, plus 58 mounted, plus 50% POA against foot or less steady offensive spearmen. So we know there's a lot of offensive spearmen, but this is a good one. Impact. Like I said before about the Macedonian list, not impact. It's not got very much light spear in the infantry. We'll just double check that. So we've got plus 100 POA unless light spearmen are charging mounted shock troops. So we've got a good impacts there that could possibly change the balance in this battle. But coming down, if we are desperate, raw hoplites, which I don't think we will choose. There's no point. But of course, we would have to. I think we would have to choose all the cavalry here. Would have to choose all the cavalry, and depending on the terrain factor, depending where they would go. But we would absolutely hammer out as many lights as possible here. We want to disrupt them pike blocks. We want to keep them engaged in a particularly bad position before we can combat them. So I think I would mash out all the lights here in this list. So I've got enough shooty stuff, enough combat to actually hit them. So we'd possibly have the light javelin cavalry on the flanks, ready to push on towards the Macedonian line. So that's the way we would have it. I'm just going to end that there so we can have a look at both the forces. So very interesting forces here. I've got to say it's going to be advantage for the Macedonians, but the quality is in the Macedonian list, but of course the quantity is in the Greek list. But hopefully you guys have taken a little bit of information from this first comparison. We'll be coming very soon in a second looking at the next round 2, and so keep tight and we'll be there in a second, folks. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, with round 2. This is, of course, the Macedonian with Greek allies versus the menace of Persia. So this is an age-old list. This is going to be interesting. I've got to say the Persian list is exciting. Very much a match for the Macedonian pike. So here we are with the list. Let's get on with this comparison. So I've got to say, all depending on the terrain type we're faced with on the second round. If it is more a rough terrain, we are playing Mediterranean agricultural map, so we will get a bit of rough terrain, which will definitely throw the advantage back into the Persian list. So first of all, we're going to have a look and see what extra stuff we can get. So remember, just coming back to the first round, what we could get with the just the Macedonians, but with Greek allies, it opens up a whole new ball game, and I think it puts it on terms with a lot of medium foot for the Persians. So as you can see, the cavalry, it is just a lot of good cavalry, as we saw before just a few moments ago in the original Macedonian list. So the extra stuff we're allowed, of course, we are allowed veteran hoplites, mercenary hoplites in this new list. This is taken from the Greek list. Citizen hoplites, Thracians, of course the medium spearmen, which we already had, massed Thracian pellets and Greek pellets, raw hoplites, and a mass of course, troops. So, like I said, depending on what terrain type we would be taken for this, and currently my bets, depending on terrain type, would be, of course, towards the Persians. Towards the Greeks. Unless the Persians have a massive rough terrain balance, I think it's going to be tricky for them to hold tight for the massive Macedonian pike phalanx that is about to come its way. So we're going to just choose a roundabout list that I feel would be happy enough. You see, I think we do lose a lot of pikes here in this list, but remember, we want to have lots of lights to counter the Persians. Remember, the Persians are actually hitting out with mixed archers and spearman combination, which we'll see soon enough. But I think the Persian cavalry will be definitely a match for the Greek cavalry. Okay, so what we're going to do is veteran pikes, mercenary hoplites. You see, this is a different mix. I don't think we're allowed as many pikemen in this list, but like I said, depending on terrain type would be depending what we choose. If I was to knock off this points here, I think we would have some massed Thracians. Remember, the Persian player will be taking advantage of rough terrain where the Greek player may not be able to deploy with his heavy foot. Because remember, the Macedonian list is very heavy foot orientated, and of course the Persian is medium foot, but the Greek list also brings some medium foot from their list to the Macedonian list. So that is kind of the list as I would here. I would definitely need to take this right position. So now we're going to see the Persian list. So the Persian list is going to be pretty good with cavalry. There's a really good cavalry list here. So we're going to start from the top. One thing that I always fear in the of course a Persian list or an Asian list, of course, is the Iranian armored cavalry with bows. Absolutely superior armored bow, but to top it off, they are swordsmen. Very much a counter. Remember, they're going to be harassing our cavalry, the Macedonian cavalry, and shooting them up, and then just taking havoc and surrounding the pikes if possible. So we come down. They're pricey for 66 points. We come down to the superior armored cavalry. They're not with bow. They are just light spear and swordsman, but still a devastating unit nonetheless. So we come down to the chariot. The Scythe Chariot, mixed bag with this. I personally would not choose it, just because if it's destroyed, if it fails to break the enemy after one round, that's 48 points in a big basket there. So I'd stay away from that unless you particularly think you're comfortable with using that unit. Then we come down to the lesser quality cavalry, which is protected Iranian cavalry without bows, just light spear, but still more than a match, and to counter, of course, the lights of the Macedonians, but also the cavalry, as long as you're shooting them down. Then we come down to the nomad horse archers, unprotected bow swordsmen, harassing tactics here from the Persians. Then we come down to the light horse archers, yet again unprotected average, harassing tactics against the pike phalanxes, but also the Macedonian cavalry. Then we come down to the light horse archers, same thing again. Sorry, light javelin horse. Javelins, really good at cracking enemy morale, harassing tactics yet again. And we come down to the mercenary hoplites, literally same as the, of course, the Macedonian choice they would get in this list. They are protected average, good heavy foot unit for the Persians. You'll be surprised how well these would do. And you come down to the Kalapara. I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm murdering it. The medium foot with light spear. Fantastic unit here. Medium foot, good in a rough terrain situation, but against a pike unit head on, it is going to be in trouble. Light spear, it is getting that impact, but could it survive? I don't know if it would survive the onslaught of the Macedonians. So looking at the list so far, the aim of the Persian list is harassing with archers, separating, getting early disruptions on the Macedonian list before they can hit them with their medium foot, and of course the mercenary hoplites. I'd be tempted to take a vast proportion of this army to be mercenary hoplites for their heavy foot. Then we come down to the raw hoplites. If I had the points, maybe, but unfortunately I don't think it's a credible unit for this list. It will get smashed. Of course, if you're desperate, irregular foot, but a big no-no, will not match against what the Macedonians have to throw at the Persians in this list. Of course, coming down to the poorly armed rabble, a big no-no yet again, not worth it. Of course, massed archers, yes, if there is rough terrain to be taken in, if there is a massive piece of rough terrain hill you can sit on and shoot down from, yes, massed archers all the way. But in the open, they're going to get cut down by the Macedonian cavalry or the medium foot of the Macedonians and the heavy foot in combination. It's going to be a bad day. Then we come down to eastern archers, eastern slingers, and javelin men. Good combination of lights there to counter the Macedonian lights and their cavalry, but also in the end cracking the cohesion of the pike phalanxes. So a strong list from the Persians. It is going to be terrain dependent. It really is for the Persians. The Persians have a lot of field. So I think straight away I would would take both of this. I think in this list I would go mainly lots of mercenary hoplites. It's going to be a hard, depending, like I said, depending on the terrain type is depending what you do with this list. If you have of course a lot of rough terrain, you'll be taking lots of medium foot, lots of the shooty cavalry, and just harassing them and trying to bait the Macedonian player into making a mistake. So of course we've got a couple of strong cohorts of cavalry. I think this list is going to be slightly more cavalry based, and then what you've got to be annoying. You've got to take all of your horse archers, all of your hitters that are going to disrupt. It's going to be interesting how this plays well in the list here. So you're just going to take a hell of a lot of archers, harass, disrupt, and then hopefully destroy. It's going to be huge amounts of. I think my cavalry would possibly archers would possibly go on that cavalry on the flanks, and then of course, I think if we were fighting here, I would definitely have to go some, of course, medium foot to take that rough terrain on the left. But apart from that, it's going to be a difficult match for the. And if you had to have poorly armed rabble, but I wouldn't recommend that in, of course, the in the mainstay list. So that would be the list. We're going to have a quick look at the combination here as we go. As you can see, the Macedonian list, of course, benefiting the heavy foot, but also gaining a lot of medium foot from the Greek list. But a tricky game for the Persians yet again. My money and kind of favour is, of course, still towards the Macedonian list. The Macedonian list has heavy foot, good cavalry. Persians, medium foot, a good choice of mercenary hoplites when they're needed, but it's all about harassing, making that Macedonian player make a wrong decision. So a kind of conclusion of round two, more professional army on the Macedonians, a more medium foot, baiting, trying to play all the cards to their advantage. But it's going to be a toss-up of terrain. If there's lots of rough terrain, the Macedonian player is going to be in a lot of problems. But in an open field, the Macedonians could get outflanked, but when they do hit, they're going to hit the Persian list. So that is a conclusion of round two, and we'll be coming very shortly with the third round coming soon. I'll see you in a second, folks. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, with the third and final round. It is going to be a epic final round when that happens. So this is, of course, in India, 326 BC. This is Macedonian versus the Indian in tropical terrain. Ooh, if the terrain doesn't benefit the Macedonians here, they are in trouble. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen the Macedonian list 3 times now. I'm going to skip over this more than anything. So remember, of course, with the Macedonian list, it is a heavy foot list. In a rough terrain match, do not be afraid to use the Thracians. Do not be afraid to use the medium foot. It is vital that in this final round you do not underestimate the use of medium foot in this list. It's going to be tricky for the Macedonians here. I'm going to autofill this so we can actually go and have a quick look at the Indian list. So the Indians have a trick right up their sleeve. And it is here, of course, depending on the terrain factor, is what's going to happen here. I love this Indian list, and I've got a really strong feeling about how well it can do against the Macedonian list. So remember, the Macedonian list excel in cavalry, heavy foot, and aren't particularly fantastically over good in medium foot. The Indians have elephants. Great counter, of course, to the overriding cavalry, which the Macedonians have. Remember, the elephant will disorder the cavalry. But remember, the Macedonian player, in my opinion, will be going headlong for your elephants with their lights. The plan here would be, of course, to shoot your elephants up and to get them disordered, fragmented and destroyed. So remember, if you've got your elephants in this list, which I will take all 6 because it is what you need. Of course, they are brilliant. Absolutely can step on anything. And putting a general in that unit is going to be even better. The POA advantages are going to stack high. But remember, they will be disordered if they sit in rough terrain, so they got to be in the open. So that is an advantage, but a disadvantage at the same time. So we come down to the heavy chariot bow. It's being able to shoot with the rather than the Persian chariot we saw before that couldn't actually have a bow or anything. We can have bows. They're good at harassing. Remember, you want to have these chariots attacking the flanks. Pull them out, make them distract the Macedonian cavalry, so your infantry can concentrate on the Macedonian phalanx. Then we come down to the light chariot, brilliant again, a small chariot, really quick. These units can easily outflank and kite units away from the main battlefield. You want to be using these chariots to kite Macedonian cavalry and lights away from the main battle line. That is vital. But after they've dealt with the cavalry, then to be harassing the pikes. Then we come down to the early Indian cavalry. I love this unit. It is light spear and swordsman, a good harassing. It is only protected, so it will struggle in close combat against the armoured Macedonian cavalry. It is good in combination with other units like the chariots and the elephants, but remember, the elephants will disorder your own units, but use them at combination. The elephants want to go after the enemy cavalry, and then once the cavalry's dealt with, to go and hit them pikes after they've been disordered. So we come down to, of course, the bow cavalry, exactly what it is in the tin. Harassing tactics, like the Persians. This Indian list is going to have to harass the Macedonians with archers, chariots, weaken them down before going into the kill. We come down to the 2 artillery pieces we're allowed. Not favouring the artillery pieces, unfortunately, here. That the fact is, it is heavy artillery. We're going to be moving and hiding in rough terrain. I think they're not needed. So we're coming down to the mainstay of the Indian list, which is, of course, the medium close fighter, which is great. Light spear, impact, swordsman, fantastic. But it will take big cohesion checks against the Macedonian phalanxes. The tactic of the Indians is sitting in rough terrain and hoping that the Macedonian player doesn't have too many medium troops or light troops. What we want to do is pull them into the rough terrain or extend our flanks really long so the Macedonian player gets taken a bit. So remember, this is a quantity army, not a quality army. The Macedonians will hit you hard with their heavy foot. We've got to hide in the rough terrain. We've got to use the terrain and our cavalry and bows to our advantage. Then we come down to 14 units of bow. Unfortunately unprotected, but they will get hit hard, very hard when in combat. But if you can shoot, you can pepper the Macedonian army. The point here is to have all the elephants. This is kind of a combination list I would have. And looking at the list, looking at the you see, what you want to do is protect your elephants. I always do a checkered formation. I think a kind of a checkered formation is keep your elephants back in the second line. Remember, the Macedonian player is going to be trying to shoot you down as much as possible. He's going to be trying to hit you with all of his heavy, his light troops before he can get in there with his cavalry. So remember, as the Macedonian player, my thing would be to destroy the elephants before I can push in there, because the elephants are the strong hit, and of course the chariots, of course, are just going to be annoying for the Macedonian player. So we'd have a mix of heavy, close Indian fighters, and of course the archers in between. So it's a combination of that fact we want to shoot up and then push on. So we want a combination of cavalry. So we've got 100 points left, which I think we probably would go with the Indian cavalry. So remember, I think choosing lights for the Indians would be a hard mistake here. So looking at the list at this point, you have enough archers in your line not to take any Indian forest tribesmen, because they are just light archers. So it's an interesting combination here. We're going to click this end turn here. Look at the both battle lines in order. So as you can see, the Indian list is more medium foot, more hard-hitting elephants with mixed combination of archers. The Macedonian list is good cavalry, good heavy foot infantry with a good mix of medium foot if necessary. But if the terrain favours the Indians, it's going to be a rough day, literally a rough day for the Macedonians. So there we go. My bets, of course, are still the Macedonians on an open field. But if the field is rough, it could sway easily towards the Indian forces. So there we go with this tournament analyzer. Strong list for the Macedonians all the way through this tournament. But I've got to say, if the opponents using the Persians, the Indians and the Greeks use their wits, they can destroy the Macedonians quite easily. But I've got to say, going to be interesting. I want to see how this progresses through it and people's thoughts below in the chat. But remember to follow that Twitch, Slytherin on Twitch, YouTube and Facebook and every social media. And of course, we will see you on the next tournament another day. And have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. And bye-bye.